Udam Parijana Shairam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shipishakam Vidamishcha Mantra Guru Arjota Shika Gurudam Tarchadane Age Korya Bandam Panchaka Patrubhya Shtaka Pashandava Chapaditana Pavanava Vaishnava Vanamona Namo Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vachani Nirvisheshan Vaikashta Adhisthani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Purnitananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasi Gauravaktabinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. In Jagannath Puri, we were discussing how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's preaching style changed quite significantly, having taken sannyas and left Odia and resided in Jagannath Puri, as Mahaprabhu himself explained in Shantipur, Shanyash Dharma nahe, Shannash Korya, Nija Janmashtane Rohe, Kutumbalaya. It's not the duty of a sannyasi, having taken sannyas, to remain at home with his family members. And we were hearing how, on the request of Sachimata, because Jagannath Puri, Odia, Godia, Orisha, and Bengal Bhumi, Bengal, like two rooms in one house. So many devotees coming and going. And he may also come, Sachimata commented, he may also come to take bath in the Ganga. And in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed and decided to remain in Jagannath Puri. His actual intention, we hear, even from the time when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had accepted initiation in Gaya, which was 4 years earlier, at least 4 years earlier. He was married at that time, second wife, Vishnupriya. And even at that time, after accepting initiation, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the middle of the night, having received the Diksha Mantra, 10-syllable Diksha Mantra and the Hare Krishna Mahamantra from Srila Ishvara Puri Prabhupada, in the middle of the night, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he got up, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't lie down, he couldn't walk, he couldn't sit, he couldn't do anything. He was completely overwhelmed with desires for taking shelter of Nanda Dulal and Braja Bhumi. And he left. He said, I'm not going back to Mayapur, I'm not interested, I'm going to Vrindavan. And then a voice from the sky said, no, you cannot go to Vrindavan now. You have so many activities, so many things have to be established in Mayapur, the Panchatattva has to be established. The din hin jota chilo harina me utharilo ta shaki jogai madhai have to be delivered, and in this way tarshaki, give evidence that the principle, as Narottam Thakur sings, the principle of din hin jota chilo, no matter how din hin degraded you may be, harina me utharilo, the holy name can deliver you. So this has to be proven. Jagai madhai. The Sankirtan movement has to be inaugurated. Shano Shano Nityananda Shano Haridas Shabatra Amaragai Koraho Prakash. Nityananda Haridas, listen, in every place, Savatra Amaragai, my teachings, Koraho Prakash. You spread Krishna consciousness. The order to preach had to be given. So many important, Mahaprabhu took to sannyas, and so many things had to be done. So therefore he returned to Mayapur. But the desire to attain Vrindavan and remain in Vrindavan and take shelter under the lotus feet of Shri Krishna, Bangshi Dhari in Brajabhumi, was Mahaprabhu's intense desire. And for that reason, he agreed, I'll go to Jagannath Puri. Now, we were discussing in Puri the extraordinary arrival of Sri Sachinandan, which drew the attention of all of the residents of Puri, including the most aristocratic and the most influential scholars and spiritual leaders of Jagannath Puri, particularly Shabhamama Bhattacharya. Finally, upon seeing, we were hearing Sachinandan approaching Jagannath Temple and seeing the flags fluttering in the wind. You still have that vision, those of you who attended the Jatra in Puri Jatra with us, you still have that vision of the flags fluttering in the breeze on the top of the Jagannath Temple. So seeing those flags at Ataranala, 18 arched bridge after Kamalapur, a few kilometers from Jagannath Puri. From there, the first beautiful darshan of the Jagannath Temple is available. And Mahaprabhu seeing the temple, seeing the chakra, seeing the flags fluttering in the breeze, his heart was fluttering with love of Godhead. And the journey, which usually takes 1.5 hours, walking from Kamalapur, a few kilometers to Jagannath Temple. Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, it took him 9 hours as he was constantly falling on the ground in love of Godhead. And then again, standing and seeing the chakra, and again, overwhelmed, falling down in love of Godhead, offering various prayers to Krishna. When Mahaprabhu then entered the temple, you could see that it was like a culmination, like a climax, a culmination, a major ephemera, a spiritual, a manifestation of spiritual experience, spiritual, extraordinary symptoms. Becoming completely overwhelmed with love of Godhead, and he remained in that state for 9 hours. And the Acharya, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he took the cotton swab and placed it under the nose of Gauranga and noticed a little bit of air coming, even though it appeared that he'd left his body. No other symptoms there. And then they carried him to the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the sentries, and then so many people were helping. Huge crowds had gathered. Mahaprabhu's 4 associates who accompanied him from Bengal, Nityananda Prabhu, Mukunda Datta, Damodar Pandit, and Jagadananda, they arrived and went to the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and saw the situation, began kirtan. Mahaprabhu revived, regained his consciousness. Some discussion was there with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Namo Narayana. The Mahaprasadam of Lord Jagannath was brought, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and his family members, he served Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates Mahaprasadam. And then the 7-day discourse, where the Acharya was trying to establish the Shariraka Bhasha commentary on the Vedanta as given by Sankaracharya. And Mahaprabhu listened patiently. Why? Because he had been ordered. You have ordered me. Considering him a young sannyasi, how will he? He was inquiring about the sampradaya. He took sannyasi from Govardhanacharya. He's in the Madhyam sampradaya, Bharati sampradaya, Saraswati sampradaya, Uttam. I can reinitiate him. And Gopinathacharya was a little frustrated that even though you've seen the symptoms, which are not possible in any human being, in his person, he's not a human being. He cannot be a human being, even having seen these symptoms. Even though you're the most learned scholar of the Vedanta in all of India, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in your home, you're unable to recognize him because you're not performing devotional service to him. Atapi te deva padam bhujam dvaya prasada leish anugrihita evihi janati tattvam bhagavan mahim no nachanyam ego achiran vichinvan. Prasada leish anugrihita evihi, without just a fraction of mercy of the Lord. Chiranapi, even though you try to speculate for many, many thousands of years, he will always remain inconceivable to you. Bhagavat Tatvan Maham Atapi Deda Padambajam Prashada Lesh Anugrihite Janati Tatvam Bhagavan Mahimno. The Janati Tatvan Bhagavan Mahimno, understanding the Supreme Personality of God, and unless you're serving him in humility, considering him the Prabhu and rendering loving devotional service unto him, you'll never understand him. Even though he may be present in your own home. Krishna confirms in Gita, Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyashchashmi tattataha. I can be known just tattata, in truth, Bhaktamam abhijanati, by rendering a devotional service. Tesham satata juktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Bhajatam priti purvak. Loving the Lord, worshipping the Lord. Bhajatam means glorifying the Lord. Just like we discussed with Aishwarya Shalbhadra Devi Dashi, Namnishta Prabhu yesterday, that if devotees are willing, we are quite agreeable to give the lecture this Sunday morning, even though we all may be a little tired having journeyed back from Jagannath Puri. I left Jagannath Puri in the morning at 6 a.m. And I trained to Howrah, and then another train to Navadip. I was in Navadip, Mayapur at 6 p.m. Journeyed all the way from Puri to Mayapur non-stop. So we may be a little on train. We may be a little exhausted, but I was eager to speak more because Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. Bhajatam Priti Purvakam. This is devotional service to glorify the Lord. Bhajatam means glorifying. Bhajatam means serving, speaking about the Lord, describing his qualities, his activities, his form, his associates. Hearing and describing the qualities of the Lord is the principal activity of devotional service. In Sanatan Shikha Mahaprabhu explains to Rupa Goswami, Nitya Siddha Krishna, to Sanatan Goswami, Nitya Siddha Krishna friend, Shraddha Kabu Noi. The love of Godhead is not something that you will get one day. It's already there in the heart, but it has become dormant. It's become inactive. The account has to be reopened the account. How is that done? Principally, Shravanadi, Shuddha Chitte, Koraya Udoy. Koraya Udoy, that natural love of Godhead will become aroused, Koraya Udoy, Shravanadi, predominantly by hearing. Of course, we know that Kali Yuga Nam Rupa Krishna Avatar, Nam Rupa Krishna Avatar, Nam Hoite Hoy, Shadra Jagat Nishta. The Lord appears in the Kali Yuga in the form of the incarnation of Sri Hari in Kali Yuga, Nam Rupe Krishna Avatar. The incarnation of Krishna in the Kali Yuga is his name. Nam Avatar, he appears in the form of his name. Nam Rupe Krishna Avatar. Nam Hoite Har Sharva Jagat Nishta. Anyone who takes the name, anyone within the universe who takes the name, Sharva Jagat Nishta, will be delivered. But taking the name, chanting the holy name, that is Shravan. When we're chanting Hare Krishna, actually, we are hearing. We are hearing our own chanting. So Shravanam Kirtanam, the Kirtan must be accompanied by Shravan. And in this way, the dormant love of Godhead is awakened. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his teaching, in his discourse with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he defeated the impersonalistic understanding, presentation, that was given by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And he actually explained that Lord Shiva himself, Kalo Brahmana Murtina Mayaiva Vihitam Devi, Prachanam Buddham Echite, Mayavadam Shastram. I will appear, O Devi. Lord Shiva himself is explaining to Mayavadam Shakshaksham, Kalo Brahmana Murtina, Prachanam Buddham Uchite Mayadam Vihitam Hidam. I will appear in the form of a Brahmin in the Kali Yuga to teach the Asat Shastra, the false Shastra of the commentary of the Shariraka Bhasha, impersonalistic commentary on the Vedanta given by Sankaracharya. Lord Shiva himself incarnates to perform that service, to re-establish the authority of the Vedic literature in Bharat Bhumi, which at that time had become affected by the Buddhist preachings, which abandoned the authority of the Vedas. The Buddhist preachings relying simply on the meditation, abandoning an austerity, jnana yoga, is abandoning the authority of the Vedas. And in this way, the first step for establishing Vaishnavism and Krishna consciousness and the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually indicating to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that the first step of my mission of spreading the holy name all over the planet, the first step of that was completed by Shankaracharya, who was the incarnation of Lord Shiva, who preached the false philosophy, Mayavadam Asakshashtam, Prochanam Buddham Uchite, Kalo Brahmana Murtina, Maidam Vitam. I will assume a form of a Brahmana to preach the false philosophy of Mayavad philosophy in the Kali Yuga, simply for the purpose of establishing the authority of the Vedas. And subsequently, the Vaishnava Acharyas, Ramanujacharya, Jamunacharya, they came and again they defeated the impersonalistic conclusions, and ultimately Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared 500 years later in Bengal Bhumi Navadip Dham to establish Achincha Ved Aved Tattva, the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is simultaneously one and different. The jiva is simultaneously a part of God and different from God. And Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he established these conclusions to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, particularly by explaining the Atmarama verse, Atmarama Shamunayo Nigranta Api Urukrame Kurvanti Ahoitakim Bhaktim Itam Buddha Gunohari, a very key verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. As we understand, as explained by Srila Chakrabarti Thakur, Aradha Bhagavan Brajesh Tanayata Dhamma Vrindavanam, Krishna is the most worshipable form of the Lord. His ultimate abode is Vrindavan. Ramanaka Chidupashana Brajavaru Bhagena Chakalpita. The most pleasing type of worship to Krishna is that which is performed by the cowherd maidens of Vrindavan, Brajavadu Bhagena Chakalpita. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Prem Pumatamaham Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matam Tatrada Rahana Paraha. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam, the ultimate evidence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we will find this, for this reason, Srila Prabhupada translated, this is one contributing reason why Srila Prabhupada translated the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita into English. There was a discussion in Calcutta about that. Bhavananda Goswami himself explained to me that Prabhupada called them one day in Calcutta. One of the devotees had written a letter saying he wanted to read some of the Goswami literatures. And Prabhupada said, I have so many books. Why my disciples are not happy to read my books? Therefore, I will provide some more advanced texts. And he's inquiring, shall we translate Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat or Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita? At that time, Bhavananda Goswami and Srila Ajay Bhattaka Swami were present. Srila Ajay Bhattaka Swami, he suggested Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. And Bhavananda Goswami, the relationship, they were two, Bhavananda Goswami and Srila Ajay Bhattaka Swami Maharaj were co-directors of ISKCON Mayapur, co-temple presidents. Their relationship was such that Bhavananda Prabhu himself told me that whatever Jayapataka Swami Maharaj suggested, he would disagree with. So when His Holiness Jayapataka, two godbrothers, that godbrothers can have such relationship. When Jayapataka Swami Maharaj suggested Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Bhavananda Goswami, he suggested Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. However, he did not know particularly what either of those books were. So not just because of Bhavananda Goswami's suggestion, but understanding the specific features of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and wherein the full teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are explained. And the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat is describing Mahaprabhu's, particularly his Navadip Leela. But as we mentioned in Navadip, Mahaprabhu's Odia, his preaching style was very simple and very simple and direct. That Michiramaya that Radha Krishna bol Shabai Shikania Shabnadia Fichin Neche Gornitai, Fichin Neche Gornitai. Go Nityananda are dancing and wandering around Nadia, simply chanting Hare Krishna and bestowing love of God on anyone who wants to take to the chanting of Hare Krishna. We worship Gaurnitai in that form. The deities of Gaurnitai that we're worshipping in our temples are in that mood in Nadia, freely distributing love of God here through preaching, wandering and here and there and chanting Hare Krishna with his associates and spreading Krishna consciousness in this way. We're not worshipping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the deity form as a sannyasi with shaven head. No. The devotees, they don't like to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu performing austerities of no opulent cloth and shaving his head and sleeping on the ground like a sannyasi would do. They're not worshipping the Lord in that form. Although sannyasa kriksha shamaha shanta nishta shanti parayanaha, as Mahaprabhu, as Gopinathacharya explained to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya from the Mahabharata, that extraordinarily enough, he does accept the sannyas order of life in order to preach Krishna consciousness. But it's painful. The Lord's devotees, it's painful for them when they see the Lord practicing austerity, taking a cold bath, sleeping on the floor, not wearing opulent clothing and no decoration. So we're worshipping the deities of Gaur Nityananda in full opulence as Navadip Chandra, the rising moon of Navadip, with a beautiful long blackish curly hair draped over his shoulders, and with a face like a rising, like hundreds of rising moons, with his lotus eyes stretching back to his ears, with beautiful earrings and jewels and a turban and a peacock feather in his head, and bracelets and necklaces and anklets, ankle bells, and beautiful luxurious cloth. And we change every day, and in this way we worship Gaur Nityananda in great opulence as they are wandering here and there, distributing love of God in Nadia. However, after taking sannyas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's preaching became much more scholastic and a very detailed scholastic academic discussion on the Srimad Bhagavatam, on the Vedanta Sutra, and establishing on the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam the conclusions of Vedanta Sutra on the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam, and particularly this verse, the Atmarama verse, very key evidence in that case that the verse is explaining Atmarama's chamunayo nigranta abhi arupame. Those who are already liberated, the verse is describing the position of Srila Shukdev Goswami. The verse is spoken by Sutta Goswami, who was he heard Shukdev Goswami narrate Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj on the bank of the Ganga, Parikshit Maharaj having retired for the 7 days there, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Shukdev Goswami. Sutta Goswami was also present at that discourse, and he is in answering the sages who had gathered in Naimisharanya when they were asking him, Puri Burini Karmani Shrodha Bhyani Vibhagashaha Atha Shadutrayat Sharam Samuvritar Atha Shadutrayat Sharam Sharubrita Munishaya. Buri Burini Karmani, there's so many scriptures. Buri Karmani, so many regulative prescriptions within those scriptures. Sota Bhyani Vibhaga Saha, which have to be heard in their various divisions. Atashadu, oh, holy man, Atashadu, Taryat Sharam. Please tell us the cream and the essence of all those scriptures. Some of Vrita Manishaya, that we will become Bruhi Bhadraya Bhutanam, Bruhi Bhadraya Bhutanam. You tell us the essence of Bruhi Bhadraya Bhutanam, which will bestow all auspiciousness on all living entities, Yanatma Suprasiditi, and give full satisfaction to the self. This is the question that the sages at Naimisharanya requested of Sutta Goswami. And in response to their question, Sutta Goswami, he began to recite the great Srimad Bhagavatam that as he had heard it from Shukdev Goswami, as he spoke on the banks of the Ganga to Parikshit Maharaj. And so he's explaining the qualification, the special qualification of Srila Shukdev Goswami to those sages at Naimisharanya, that Shukdev Goswami was born a liberated soul. He was already liberated whilst in the womb. In fact, he remained in the womb for 16 years because he was not inclined to take birth and become influenced by the material energy. So the self-composed Muni, Shukdev Goswami, and Krishna himself had to come from Dwarka upon the request of Vyasadeva and induce Sukdev Goswami to take birth. And immediately upon taking birth, he took sannyas. So this is the great realized soul, Shukdev Goswami, and his descriptions that he's walking through the landscape, and he goes past the pukur where the young damsels are bathing, and they're bathing without clothes, bathing. And Shukdev Goswami, similarly, he's not wearing clothes. He's 16 years old. He looks like Krishna, but he's so much off the bodily concept of life that he doesn't even care to wear clothes. And as he's walking past those damsels, they similarly could recognize that he has no concept of gender, male, female, completely liberated from that concept. And they didn't even cover their bodies, and he wasn't affected in any way. And when Vyas Muni, who subsequently came past, immediately they covered their bodies because he was a grihasta, even though he's Shaktivesh avatar. So just try to understand the liberated state of Srila Shukdev Goswami, his extraordinary position, completely liberated. So the verse is explaining Atmarama Chamunayo Nirgranta Api Urukrame, that Nirgranta, there's nothing binding such a liberated soul to the material world in any way. However, Kurvanti Ohoitikim Bhaktim Itam Bhuta Gono Hari, such liberated soul like Shukdev Goswami. The question is, if he has no desire, if he's completely Atmarama, means self-satisfied, completely self-satisfied, why would he undergo the trouble to study Srimad Bhagavatam and hear Srimad Bhagavatam? He didn't need to do that. He was already liberated. So why did he do it? Shukdev Goswami took the time to study Srimad Bhagavatam and then narrate Srimad Bhagavatam. Why did he do that? Because even the liberated souls are attracted to hearing and chanting about Sri Hari, Bhagavan Sri Hari. Lord Krishna. Even the liberated souls, even though they're not attracted to anything in the material world, Nigranta api rupame, Kurvanti ahotikim bhaktim, they're attracted to unmotivated, unalloyed devotional service to Sri Hari, which means itam bhuta gono Hari, that this gives evidence that the qualities of Sri Hari, bhuta gono Hari, are not material. Because if it was material in any way, then the Atmaramas would not be at all attracted to. So this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he explained this verse, it convinced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. In fact, Mahaprabhu's explanation was so powerful that he understood that no ordinary human being could speak in this way. And it convinced him. And then at that time, the Acharya, he felt great, he felt remorse and regret that I am such an offender, that I have neglected your transcendental form and not glorified your transcendental qualities and activities, and have minimized these things. And in this way, I am a great offender. And he fell down at the lotus feet of Sachinanda and Gauranga Mahaprabhu, begging forgiveness. Seeing this humility of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Gauranga Mahaprabhu became very mercifully disposed, and he displayed his four-armed form of Lord Narayan to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and then his form of Shadabhuj, which we saw in the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. We saw in the Siddhabakula temple, Sadbhuj deity, with carrying 6 arms, carrying the bow of Lord Ramchandra, Krishna's flute, and the sannyas danda and kamandalu of the sannyasi Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Extraordinary. Sadbhuj, Apurva Rupa, the unprecedented form that he showed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. The next morning, after delivering Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Mahaprabhu, he arrived just after the Mangalati. Seeing the Mangalati of Lord Jagannath, he arrived at the door of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house with the Mahaprasadam and the garlands of Lord Jagannath. And immediately, with great bliss in seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Acharya, he accepted that, even having not washed his mouth or cleaned his teeth or anything, which is extraordinary for a Brahmin scholar of the quality and character of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, that usually would perform so many activities, purificatory activities before eating in the morning. And none of those having been performed, but he immediately accepted and honored that Mahaprasadam of Lord Jagannath, quoting the verse from Padma Purana, Nadesha niyamastatana kala niyamastata. Praptam anam dhram shishtai bhaktavyam harir abravit. Nadesha, no consideration of the place. Na kala, no consideration of the time. Praptam anam dhram shishtai. Immediately upon receiving the Mahaprasadam of the Lord, particularly Jagannath Mahaprasadam, bhaktavyam harir abravit, one should honor it. This is the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Mahaprabhu was so elated, having he felt that all his desires were fulfilled, that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had developed faith in the Mahaprasadam of Lord Jagannath, developed that faith. And we were discussing how actually this is the purpose of human life, to develop faith in the Vaishnavas, in the deity, in the Dham, in the Shastra, in the Mahaprasad, in Srila Prabhupada, in his movement to develop faith in these things. And this development of faith is the result of practicing sadhana bhakti. Abhyasha jogena tato mam ichchaptam dhananjay. Krishna explains in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Abhyasha jogena tato, by practicing sadhana bhakti, chanting in the regulative way, following the principles, worshipping the deity, associating with devotees, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, sadhana bhakti, Abhyasa jogena tato mam ichchaptam dhananjaya, by practicing in this way, mam ichchaptam, a desire to attain me will be awakened, will be aroused, will be developed, will be increased. Mam ichchaptam dhananjaya, you will get the desire for me. So in this way, by developing faith and to take shelter in these things, the Mahaprasad, showing respect to Mahaprasadam, cultivate this and train our children in this type of values, showing respect to Mahaprasadam, showing respect to the Vaishnava, cleanliness, the Vaishnava values. These things, even if we're not going back home to Godhead in this life, for some misfortune, if we're not directly going back to Godhead, these values of Sattva-gun will remain with us and be our assets in our subsequent life when we're carrying on with our spiritual practice. So these values are to be cultivated And Mahaprabhu was overjoyed that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had developed faith in the Mahaprasadam of Lord Jagannath, more so than in all of his Smriti regulative rules and regulations. Then, even though Mahaprabhu's desire was to attain Vrindavan and take shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Hari, and upon attaining Jagannath Puri and seeing Bangshi Dhari, Nanda Dulal, and when Mahaprabhu took the darshan of Lord Jagannath, he would see Braja Janaranjan, Gopal Shamsundar in Vrindavan. That would be his vision. However, having attained that in Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu did not remain in Jagannath Puri. And very quickly, after 5 weeks only, in the Magh Mas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas in Katwa. In the Palgun Mas, he journeyed to Jagannath Puri. In the Chaitra Mas, he delivered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And in the Boishak month, he left Jagannath Puri for his South Indian tour, explaining to the devotees that he wanted to search out Vishwarup, his elder brother, who had taken sannyas, and no one had heard any news from him. So, desiring to search out Vishwarup, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sought permission, first from the various his associates, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Lord Jagannath, and eventually with his intimate associates and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, having taken the permission of Lord Jagannath and receiving his garland, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Parikram did a Pradokin of Lord Jagannath, and then he left on his South Indian tour. Now, the South Indian tour that continued for 2 years, and that's a very extraordinary part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. In fact, Kaviraj Goswami, he divides Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life into 3 principal sections: the Adi Lila, Adi Kanda, Madhya Kanda, and Anta Kanda. Adi Lila is Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Mayapur up to taking sannyas. Madhya Lila is Mahaprabhu's pastimes after taking sannyas. And the Anta Lila is Mahaprabhu's final pastimes when residing in Jagannath Puri. Now, the Madhya Lila amongst the 3 is actually the shortest period. Navadev, the Adi Lila is the longest period, that's 24 years. Mahaprabhu remained on the planet for 48 years and then entered into the deity of Tota Gopinath in Puri, which we took darshan of that deity, very beautiful darshan and kirtan that day. And Mahaprabhu, 24 years in Odia, Navadev, and then took sannyas. There's a 6-year period of Madhya Lila, and then an 18-year period, Anta Lila, or Mahaprabhu remained in Jagannath Puri. So the Madhya Lila being only 6 years, however, Kaviraj Goswami describes it as the principal section of Mahaprabhu's life. Tar modde choy bachor gamon agamon, kabu dokin, kabu go, kabu brindavan. He's explaining that within the second half of Mahaprabhu's life, having taken sannyas, he says, within that period, there was a 6-year period. Gamon agamon, simply in which Mahaprabhu was simply going and coming. Gamon agamon. Kabul Dokin, he went on the South Indian tour. Kabul Gold, he returned to Bengal and delivered Rupa Sanatan, Kabul Vrindavan, and ultimately he went to Vrindavan. And then upon returning, he preached to Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and Prakashananda Saraswati, respectively. So it's in that coming and going, the South Indian tour and the tour to Bengal and in the tour to Vrindavan, it's in that 6-year period of Gamon Agamon, Mahaprabhu's, within those coming and going, Mahaprabhu's principal teachings are delivered. And for that reason, it's considered the principal portion of Mahaprabhu's life. And you'll find that Srila Prabhupada in 1968, he published the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, even before completing 2nd canto and beyond of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada compiled the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which you'll find is a summary of the Madhya Lila, beginning with and covering all of those conversations that Mahaprabhu had in his travels, the Rupa Shikha, Sanatan Shikha, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, deliverance of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is described, deliverance of Prakasananda Saraswati, and the teachings to Ramananda Roy, which is in the South Indian tour. So in this way, the South Indian tour is very important, and Mahaprabhu preached extensively to Ramananda Roy and to the South Indian Vaishnavas, the Tattvavadis and the Sri Vaishnavas, and others. And Mahaprabhu defeated and induced them to become Krishna conscious and chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And that is a topic which can be described at a later date in detail, perhaps during South Indian Yatra. Something about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's preaching and traveling and preaching in South India. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So we can discuss that at a later date. Now, what we're going to be discussing over the next few weeks today, although we're pretty much just an introduction today, a review and introduction. And next week, we won't be having a session because we're on Guru Mandala Parikrama here, but the following week, for at least for the next 2 or 3 months, every Sunday morning, we'll be conducting these sessions if you're so interested, if you're interested. And we'll be discussing the events that happened between Mahaprabhu returning from South India and then his first meeting with Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, and ultimately the teachings that he gave to Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, the Rupa and Sanatana Shikha, we'll also be discussing. So we were hearing that after the South Indian tour, Mahaprabhu had come back to Jagannath Puri just around the Snan Yatra time. 2 years had passed since he had arrived and delivered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he returned from his South Indian tour, which took 2 years. Around the time of Snan Yatra, he was very happy. Mahaprabhu was overjoyed to see the Snan Yatra performance of Lord Jagannath. But the Anurvasha, the time of retiring, when Lord Jagannath's body is renovated and he has a fever and he takes medicine, that during that time Mahaprabhu was feeling great sorrow. And so he went to Alalanath, which we visited, Alalanath, and we saw the Prem Shila, the stone, which is left after Mahaprabhu lying down, paying obeisances there. And the four-armed form of Lord Vishnu Janardhan, which is considered non-different from Lord Jagannath in Puri, and in this way Mahaprabhu was able to get solace. And then the devotees, Prataparuja Maharaj and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, were discussing how to bring Chaitanya Mahaprabhu back to Jagannath Puri. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya sent devotees, Pache Prabhu Nikat Oilo Bhaktagan, Gaud Hoite Bhakta Aishay Koilo Nivedon. And all that they said simply is that Gauda Hoite Vaishnava, Gauda Hoite Bhakta Aishay. The devotees are coming from Bengal. And immediately, without any further discussion, hearing that the devotees are coming from Bengal, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he returned to Jagannath Puri in order to receive those devotees. So let's hear a little bit about that reception. Gopinathacharya, he came into the presence of the king and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to announce that devotees had arrived from Bengal and were awaiting on the banks of Narendra Sharova. Gauda Hoite Vaishnava Shayachindui Shakta Mahaprabhur Bhakti Shab Maha Bhagavata. 200 devotees had come from Bengal, and they're all greatly advanced, Maha Bhagavata, Mahaprabhur Bhakti Shab, devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he's mentioning this to the king because naturally the king, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the king, Prataparuja Maharaj, is desiring an opportunity to attract the attention of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's desiring to get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Gopinathacharya comes and mentions to the king, obviously implying that now here's an opportunity for you to serve, do some service for the dear associates of Chaitanya, the Gauda Hoite Bhakta, Gauda Hoite Vaishnava, from Gaudadesh, from the Mahaprabhu's Priya Bhaktagan is from Navadip Dham. They've come. So they're required to arrange the accommodation for them and prasadam, and immediately the king began to make the arrangements for those devotees. And then the king inquires from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Mahaprabhuragan Joto Ailo Gauda Hoite Bhattacharya Eka Dekao Amate. Oh, Bhattacharya, Eka, one after another, Eka, Dekao Amate. You show me Mahaprabhuragan Joto Ailo Gauda Hoite. Mahaprabhuragan, all of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates who have come from Jagannath Puri. Please point them out to me and tell me who they are one after another. So Acharya, Gopinath Acharya, he suggested, let's go up onto the roof. And there, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya suggested, we'll go up on the roof, and Gopinath Acharya, he can describe and he can mention all of the devotees who are arriving, because I don't actually know them all. I'm also desiring to become introduced to these devotees, because although also born in Navadip, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya Bengali, born in Navadip from Gaudadesh, but he had been away from Gaudadesh, from Navadip for decades, first going to Mithila and studying Nyaya, and then going to Jagannath Puri and setting up his university where he'd become the instructor of the king. So it'd been many decades he'd been away from Navadip. And in this way, although he's from Navadip, he didn't know who the devotees were. So Gopinath Acharya was he was introducing and explaining to both Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and King Prataparudra Maharaj all who was present amongst Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees who had come from Bengal. Damodar Sharup Govinda Dui John Malla Prashad Laya Jai Jaha Vaishnavgan, where the devotees had assembled, Damodar, Swarup and Govinda. Damodar Swarup is Mahaprabhu's personal secretary, and Govinda his personal servant. So Dui John, those two, Malla Prashad Laya, taking the Prashadam of Lord Jagannath and the garland of Lord Jagannath, Malla Prashad Laya Jai Jaha Vaishnavgan, they went to where those devotees had assembled. And they offered the garlands and the Mahaprashadam to Advaita Thakur. And this way, Mahaprabhu was showing his appreciation, showing his respect and his love for the devotees of Bengal who had come, by sending his most intimate servants to offer the Jagannath Mahaprashadam and the garlands, and in this way show his affection, show his appreciation, and to receive them. And this is Vaishnava culture. Either one personally goes, definitely if it's a senior person, one's guru or a sannyasi, a Prabhupada disciple, one's teacher, if they're arriving, one should go forward and should greet them and should meet them. This is Vaishnava culture. And but if that's not immediately, if that's not entirely possible, then certainly one should send one's representatives. And as soon as possible, one should personally go and meet those persons. So Mahaprabhu did that. He sent his representatives. Mahaprabhu, very senior, he's sannyasi, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, he sent his representative. They're waiting there. They're taking the prashad and the garlands. The initial meeting is there, and then they bring Sarup, Damodar, and Govinda. They bring all of the devotees who've just arrived from Bengal. They bring them into the association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's the plan. And as we were discussing that in Siddha Bakula, that having brought them, or at Haridas Thakur's Samadhi, having brought them to his associate, to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu was inquiring, where is Haridas? Where is Haridas? And we discussed that in Haridas Thakur's Samadhi in Jagannath Puri. So seeing this go on, seeing this happening, that these two personalities had taken the Mahaprashadam and the flower garlands and first offered to Advaita Thakur, the King Prataparudra, he's asking, who is that extraordinary person to whom they offered the garlands and the prashad? Raja kohe jare mala dilo dui jon, jare mala dilo dui jon, to whom the garlands were given. Ascharya tejo boro mahan kaha kon jon. He is Ascharya tejo boro. He is greatly effulgent. He's a boro mahan. He must be an extraordinary person. Kaha kon jon. You tell me who is that person. Acharya kohe, Gopinath Acharya replied, Acharya kohe, ihanam advaita acharya Mahaprabhu Ramanna Patra Sharvashiro Darjo. His name is Advaita Acharya, Mahaprabhu Ramanna Patra. He is honored even by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's very interesting that to explain the position of Advaita Thakur, his exalted position and his extraordinary importance. Gopinathacharya explains that, well, he is honored by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's enough. That's enough for us to understand how special he must be. That Mahaprabhu Manna Patra, he is a recipient of Mahaprabhu's respect. So we can understand how special and how exalted he must be. Sarva Shiro Darja, the topmost devotee. And then he began describing the other devotees who are accompanying Advaita Acharya. We will go through the names of these devotees, because just by hearing the names, Gaudangi, Rishangi, Gone, Nitashidha Kori Mone, they're all eternal associates of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, those same associates who were enjoying with him in Brajabhumi, Vrindavan. They've appeared in the families of Brahmins in Navadip to associate with Mahaprabhu in his Navadip Leela. And just by hearing their names, we're purified. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he describes them in a very beautiful way. So we'll just read the Bengali, hear their names. You will be able to follow everything. It's just their names that are mentioned. Shrivas Pandit Iha, Pandit Bakreshwar, Vidyanidhi Acharya Iha, Pandit Gadadhar, Acharya Ratna Iha, Pandit Purandor, Gangadash Pandit Iha, Pandit Shankar, A. Murari Gupta Iha, Pandit Narayan, Haridas Thakur, Iha Bhuvana Pavan. Here is Haridas Thakur. He is the purifier of the three worlds. Iha Hari Bhatta Iha, Sri Narasinghanand, Iha Vasudev Datta, Iha Shivanand, Govinda Madhav Ghosh, A. Bashu Ghosh, Tin Vaid, Kirtan Prabhu, Payan Shantosh. Govinda Madhav Ghosh, A. Bashu Ghosh, the three brothers, Tin Vai, Govinda, Madhav, and Bashu Ghosh. Tin Vai Kirtan, the kirtan which was performed by these three brothers, Prabhu Payan Shantosh, gave great pleasure to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's interesting that these three brothers are mentioned, and it's mentioned that their particular qualification is that they gave their kirtan gave Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enjoyed their kirtan so much. Raga Pandit Iha, Acharya Nandan, Shriman Pandit Iha, Srikanta Narayan, Suklambar, Deko A, Shrida Bijoy, Balab Shain A, Purushatam Shanjai, Kulinagram Bashi A, Shattaraj Khan, the residents of Kulinagram, Shattaraj Khan, Ramananda Adi, Shobe, Deko Vidaman. Look, they're all present here, headed up by the residents of Kulinagram. They're also on that party, headed by Sattaraj Khan and Ramananda Bashu. Mukunda Das, Narahari, Sri Raghunandan, Kanda Bashi Chiranjeev, Ashulochan from Kanda, another village, is Chiranjeev and Sulochan. How many more names shall I speak to you? Gopinathacharya concludes. How many more names shall I speak to you? All of these devotees are dear associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, seeing all of these devotees, the king of Puri was overwhelmed. Raja kohe deki mor, hoilo chamatkar. Seeing them, I become astonished. Vaishnaver, ache tejo deki nahi ar. I've never seen Vaishnaver teja. The effulgence of these devotees is extraordinary. Koti Shurja Shama Shab, Ujjala, Varan, Kabu nahi shuni e modur kirtan. Their effulgence is extraordinary, but what is amazing even more so is Kabu nahi shuni e modur kirtan. I've never heard such a sweet kirtan. And his purport, Prabhupada's commenting that naturally the king of Puri would hear so many kirtans. Even in the modern times we're in Puri, you'll see down the Grand Road, so many kirtan parties are coming. What to speak of 500 years ago, and you could imagine the quality of those kirtans. But the king is mentioning, I've never, Modur kirtan, I've never heard such sweet kirtan before. Ache prem, ache nitto, ache hari dhani. Kaha nahi dekhi ache kaha nahi shuni. Such love, ache prem, ache nitya, such dancing. these associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they're not traveling like us, that we're always in anxiety. We're going to be late. Where's the taxi? Taxi coming. Have you got the other card? Have we got the booking? Is it confirmed? Did you print out the boarding pass? We're always late. We're always in anxiety. rushing. Luggage, this and that. What time will we arrive? Mahaprabhu's associates, they're traveling, simply performing kirtan. And Sivananda Sain is arranging everything, accommodation, prasadam, paying the taxes at the various toll gates. And the devotees are simply absorbed in kirtan. Ache Prem, Ache Nitto, dancing, Ache Hari Dhani, chanting of the holy name of Hari. Kaha Nahi Deki, I've never seen it before, Kaha Nahi Shuni, and I've never heard such kirtan before. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he replies, Bhattacharya kahe a modur bhakchan, Chaitanya Shrishti a prem sankirtan. This sweet sound, this sweet transcendental sound is a special creation of the Lord. Chaitanya Shrishti is created by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prem sankirtan, the congregational chanting and love of Godhead. And he goes on to explain, Avatari Chaitanya Koilo, Dharma Pracharan, Kali Kale Dharma, Krishnanam Sankirtan, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the avatar for the age, and he's appeared to spread the Krishna consciousness, the religion of Krishna consciousness. Kali Kale Dharma Krishnanam Sankirtan. The chanting of the holy name of Krishna is the religious principle for the age. So in this way, through the lips of the king of Puri, is astonished by the special, extraordinary attraction, sweetness of the kirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates. In this way, Kaviraj Goswami is showing the importance, the unique features of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement and his style of practicing Krishna consciousness. That it was astonishing. Mahaprabhu's style of kirtan and his followers and their approach to Bhagavad Bhakti devotional service was seen as astonishing by the king of Puri. And in this way, the appreciation and the glorification and the importance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement is established through the lips of the king of Puri as the dear devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrive in Jagannath Puri after 2 years of separation from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Emoto Pratobda Aishe Gaudayar Bhaktagan. In this way, every year, we'll see Kaviraj Goswami describing in great detail. He describes many verses describing the arrival. In fact, this 20-day period between Snanyatra, we heard Snanyatra Mahaprabhu went to Alalanath, and the devotees from Bengal arrived, and then they cleaned the Gundicha temple, and then they performed Rath Yatra. That period only goes for a period of 20 days. And that's described over four chapters of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So here Kaviraj Goswami goes into great detail, describing the incident of the Bengali devotees' first arrival and the first performance of the Rath Yatra festival with the Mahaprabhu in the association of his dear loving devotees from Navadip. That's described in great detail by Kaviraj Goswami. And then it happens every year subsequently for the next 20 years, but almost 20 years, but it's not described in such detail every year because Kaviraj Goswami is explaining that in the same way it happened every year. But it's so important that 4 chapters of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita are given just to describe that 20-day period. And previously, the 2-year period was discussed in one chapter. Mahaprabhu's traveling in South India. So just see how much importance Kaviraj Goswami is placing on the meeting of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with the devotees from Bengal, and they're coming from Bengal and they're associating with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. It is a highlight of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and very important leela for us. Emoto Pratabda Aishe Gaura Bhaktagan. In this way, Pratabda, every year the devotees came from Bengal. Prabhu Shange Rohi Kohe Jatra Darshan to Jatra Darshan, see the Rath Yatra festival, Prabhu Shange in the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in the next session, we'll be discussing, we won't have a class next week, but in the next session, we'll be discussing subsequent 2 years. Mahaprabhu remained from this time, he remained in Jagannath Puri for 2 years. And although he was requesting repeatedly permission to go to Vrindavan, eventually it was given by Ramananda Roy and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya after 2 years. And Mahaprabhu began his journey for Vrindavan, that's chapter 16 of Madhya Lila. Although he didn't go directly to Vrindavan, he went via Bengal and he delivered Rupa and Sanatan, and we'll be discussing that journey in great detail over the next few weeks, however, not next week. Are there any questions on topics we discussed today? Looks like there's a hand up there by Manjula Mataji, the hand up. Yes, Manjula. Or Nidhi, can I ask a question, Nidhi?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Manjula, please, yes, ask your question.
So this is, Prabhuji, this is Nidhi here. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, my question is not related to today's session. If you kindly allow me, I wanted to understand the Vishishta, that Advaita, Dvaita, Advaita concept. Briefly, if you could, the concept of Vishishta Advaita, Shuddha Advaita, and this Dvaita Advaita concept, Prabhuji, just briefly.
Perhaps we could look at that another day. That's a bit technical, take some time. But okay. Vishishta means variety. Vishishta Advaita means variety in the oneness. That'll take some time. Let's do that another time. Nidhi.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Nidhi. Question from Nidhi.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for this wonderful class. Prabhu, so you were saying about the Atmaram verse, and you said the liberated souls are also so interested to read Srimad Bhagavatam and understand. So, most of the devotees started reading the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the common complaint they say is they keep forgetting what they have read. So, how do they develop this habit of regularly reading Srila Prabhupada's book, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhu?
Well, even if that's okay if you forget what you read. I mean, in the session today, I shared so many things from the first canto. I mean, you will remember, if you keep hearing, you'll remember. And so many things I remember from the first canto because we keep hearing. So it's Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya, as service. So it should be done regularly, hearing every day as much as we eat. Just like eating, you have to do, otherwise you become famished, become weak. So similarly, we have to hear the philosophy, otherwise we'll be hearing the dictates of the illusory energy. So you have to, how to get the determination to hear regularly. We'll make some habit, somehow or other set up some system. It's easy with other devotees. If you meet together in here, then you kind of give support to each other. So or take a course, or we have our online courses with ISKCON Mangalore. Take a course if you're not already enrolled in a course, or regular classes. In this way, you'll regularly hear. Those who've completed Bhakti Shastri, ready, you can begin the Bhakti Bhairav, and in this way, it'll give you support to regularly hear. Adish.
I'll take up this question. Prabhu, one question was there that today when we debate, people can't take it, they get, ego is so heavily involved. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discussing a Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, even though they are in two opposite ends of the philosophy, there is so much mutual respect that they are hearing with affection. But today, somebody debates, it's even in our, Krishna consciousness, we have a debate on certain issues. We just are too attached to our thoughts. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu previous model of preaching a Harinam Sankirtan, isn't that more practical than debating, or how we should?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Mahaprabhu, he's, for the circumstances where required, he's got the appropriate formula for preaching Krishna consciousness. It's not that he preached, and the way he preached to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is extraordinary because it's unprecedented, because there's no example of that. And perhaps delivering Keshav Kashmiri, but that wasn't based on the Vedanta, that was based on the Alankar, principles of poetry. He defeated Keshav Kashmiri. So it's unprecedented. That's why it's extraordinary. And as a sannyasi, it's very appropriate that he preaches in that way. And subsequently, he preached to Prakasananda Saraswati similarly, and the teachings to Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami and Ramananda Roy. They're also, well, particularly those Prakasananda Saraswati, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami. They're very scholastic, very, very elevated and analytical presentations. But that's not the only way Mahaprabhu preached after sannyas. Also, he would be wandering Krishna, 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 Krishna. Hey, simply chanting the name of Krishna. And all of the village people, all of the local people who saw him, they're also endowed with love of Godhead. And the people who saw them also became endowed with love of Godhead. So it's an additional mode of preaching that Mahaprabhu began after taking sannyas, but he carried on with the simple programs of chanting and distributing love of Godhead freely simply by chanting Hare Krishna. So of course, that method is our prime method of preaching Krishna consciousness. Nam Sankirtan, festivals, prasadam distribution, people will become attracted. And when there is discussion on philosophy, then the devotees have to be faithful to the Goswami Siddhanta, the conclusions, and present them in a palatable way.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Adish.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Adish, yes, your question.
Prabhuji, how to maintain? I have two questions. First one is how to maintain the same amount of concentration throughout the reading session.
Well, get enough rest beforehand. And that's it. Just get enough rest. That'd probably be my best advice. Get enough rest so you won't feel sleepy. And as I mentioned, if you can study in the association of devotees who have a taste for that type of thing, you just try and keep up with them. By their association, you'll also be enlivened. As Sanjay Dekama, Krishna explains in the second chapter of the Gita, that our desires develop due to the association that we keep. So associate with devotees who have that deep attraction and can absorb their mind in the Shastra, associate with them and study the Shastra in their association.
Prabhuji, and what is the meaning of Mahashai, Goshai and Thakur?
Mahashai means great soul. Mahashai, great soul. Mahashai, Maha is usually referring to one's teacher, Mahashai. And Goshai is Goswami, control of the senses. Swami, master of the senses. Thakur is the highest title in the Gaudiya nomenclature to Thakur, Haridas Thakur, Shananta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That is the highest title of the liberated, perfected Paramhamsa Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur. So thank you all very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Something in the chat? Yeah, no, we're good. Thank you all very much. And with Krishna's blessings, we can reconvene in a couple of weeks and carry on for more discussions on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes as described by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat by Vrindavanas Thakur. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam.
Dandavat pranam. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat pranam. Dandavat pranam. Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.